I see someone by the name of Lisa Finn. I think you know who that is, David Brio. And Debbie. So much fun.
Yes.
So again, welcome to our program. We will get started in just a few moments. Very excited to have you all here with us tonight. Hi, Anthony Guarna. Can't resist saying hello to my old and dear friends who are now coming into this call, this event. Okay, wonderful. I think that we'll be timely, which is odd coming from a Jewish event, but I think we'll start on time. So my partner in crime here will continue to let people in as they come. But I want to welcome you all tonight to this incredible program. We are the Miami Beach JCC. I'm Karen Sepsimwell, I'm the Director of Cultural Arts and Adult Programs here in Miami Beach. And I'm really excited about tonight's program because as many of you who are here with us tonight, I have a personal connection to our guest, David Brio, and to the story that he tells in this magnificent dappled sea. And anyone who shares a love of Italy and Brooklyn will be immediately drawn into his book, which means basically that everybody should love this book. And so with the magic of Zoom tonight, we're fortunate this year, the silver lining, as we say, of this very challenging year, we've been able to invite people from near and far to our Miami Beach JCC community to tune into our programming. So when my childhood friend, Debbie Biro, shout out to Debbie, told me about her brother David's new adventure, I knew we had to do this event together. And I do want to say hello to all the familiar faces who are out there tonight. I want to thank The Gift of Life and my friend Robin Malik, along with Jody Greenspan, for partnering with us to highlight a critically important real life aspect of David's story that we'll hear about. So we're in for a very emotional meeting of a recent bone marrow donor and recipient at this event tonight. So it's going to be quite amazing. So for those of you who don't know, David Biro is not only an accomplished writer, he is a practicing physician and teaches medicine at SUNY Downstate Medical Center. He's also the author of 2 nonfiction books, 100 Days, My Unexpected Journey from Doctor to Patient, and The Language of Pain, Finding Words, Compassion, and Relief. He's also published pieces in the New York Times, Slate, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and various medical journals, and he has degrees from the University of Pennsylvania, Columbia Medical School, and a PhD in English literature from Oxford University. He's also quite humble, which is amazing. So now I'd also like to introduce you to our host this evening, Dr. Miriam Kasanov. She is the Director of Holocaust Education for Miami-Dade County Public Schools and is the Director of the Holocaust Institute of the University of Miami. She's also a child survivor of the Holocaust. So please welcome to your screen, Dr. Miriam Kasanov and David Biro. And we will leave time for questions at the end of the program. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat as we go along. And thank you so much for being with us tonight, and take it away, Dr. Miriam and David. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited and honored to be here. I also chair the Bring Your Own Lunch series at the JCC and the JCCU. And tonight, I certainly want to thank the Gift of Life Marrow Registry for inviting me to moderate this very, very important program. And to start off the evening, I am so excited to introduce you to my new friend, David Brio, because I've got to tell you, when Karen sent me the book, this is the way it looks. I don't know if you can all see it. It's called The Magnificent Dappled Sea. I just dove into it, and I couldn't stop reading. It's just such a magnificently beautiful, beautiful story that when I was asked then to moderate this discussion and to meet David, I was so excited. So let me just tell you a little bit for a minute what the book is about. And then I have a question to ask David. In a small northern Italian village, 9-year-old Luca Tabiano catches a stubborn cold and is subsequently diagnosed with leukemia. His only hope for survival is a bone marrow transplant. After an exhaustive search, a match turns up, but it's 3,000 miles away in the form of the most unlikely donor, Joseph Neiman, a rabbi in Brooklyn, New York, who is suffering from a debilitating crisis of faith. As Luca's young nurse back in Italy, Nina Bocelli, risks her career and races against time to try to help Luca, she uncovers terrible secrets from World War II, secrets that reveal how a Catholic child could have Jewish genes. So one of the themes of the book is, can inheritance be transcended by love? That is the question at the heart of this magnificent Dappled Sea, a novel that challenges the idea of identity and celebrates the ties that bind us together. Now, I bet you that you're dying to go out and buy that book immediately, and you better. So to start the conversation, David.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to be talking to you again. You yourself had a bone marrow transplant. So would you tell us more about that and how it inspired you to write the book, and why you chose the title for the book?
Absolutely. So I, as you said, did have bone marrow transplant about 25 years ago now, shortly after finishing my medical residency. And at the time, I had 3 siblings, and I was lucky. One of those siblings was a match. So I didn't have to go through a registry. My sister provided me with marrow. And fortunately, it turned out very well. Here I am, 25 years later. Another thing that sort of inspired me was a couple of years after my transplant, a friend of mine sent me an article from the New York Times, and there was a picture of this young boy next to a horse. And in the text, I found out that this young boy was from a small town in Italy. He had been very sick. and he had to have a transplant, which he received from an international registry. And the donor turned out to be a rabbi from Brooklyn, New York. And I thought, wow, this is just an incredible story. And then even more so was the fact that the people in the town where the boy was from were so absolutely, grateful to this stranger from Brooklyn when the boy survived, that they decided that they would have to do something for this great man. And so they pooled all their resources and they flew the rabbi and his family to Italy, and they organized a huge celebration. So, I mean, I was just totally overwhelmed by that story. And I said to myself, I have to use this story in some way. So I guess you could say I kind of stole the idea, which I'm told that a lot of writers do. So hopefully I'm not offending anybody by this. But I sort of took the framework of that story and then sort of filled it in with my own details and with my own characters, basically.
So did you ever really contact the real rabbi from the article or anything like that? And did you do that, or did you just move ahead and create the novel the way you wanted it?
I just moved it. In fact, I did not want to know anything about these people. I wanted to sort of make up the rest of. I wanted to basically make it my own. So there were just so many aspects of the story, so many elements that just made it perfect, a perfect kind of fit for me. I've always been a huge, had a huge love for everything Italian. The people, the food, the culture. My mother's father was Italian. He came from an area around Naples. And I was very close to him growing up. I remember actually, he used to make raviolis, and I would help him actually roll the dough while he was testing me on my multiplication tables. So that was one, thing. And then I spent a year during college in Rome studying, and essentially just fell in love with Rome and fell in love with Italy in general. So that drew me, of course, to this. And then, of course, the fact that I had a transplant, but also I kind of wanted to get the medicine and the science of this whole transplantation experience. So the title of the story, This Magnificent Dappled Sea, refers actually to Dr. Crespi in the book, Luca's doctor, who is looking under the microscope and looking at the marrow and the cells that make up the marrow. And they're incredibly beautiful. The shapes, the colors, and not only beautiful, but it's just incredible on what these cells actually do. The white cells that fight infection, the red cells that carry oxygen, the platelets that stop you from bleeding. So I wanted to capture that. And also actually, when these cells can go awry, as in the case of somebody who gets a disease like Luca did, leukemia. The other thing that is really interesting is just the concept of a bone marrow transplant, which is very different from a solid organ transplant, where you sort of take something out and put something actually back in. In the case of a bone marrow transplant, you don't actually take it out. You kind of destroy with chemotherapy and radiation the cells. And then you don't actually put the marrow into the marrow. What you do is you get, and I don't know if you remember this scene, but the nurse describes it, the IV bag that Luca gets as something that looks like stracciatella soup. This IV bag contains the stem cells that are then injected into a vein and have to find the marrow themselves. So they circulate through the bloodstream and eventually find the marrow where they're supposed to make their home and then produce the cells. It's a process called homing, which is a very intricate kind of thing, and it's fascinating of itself. But while this is occurring in the body, Luca is also kind of outside the body, is trying to find out where his home is. So it sort of operates on both of those levels.
I couldn't get over how you intertwine so many themes and subjects. There's a love story, for those of you who are romantics and like love stories, between the nurse and the doctor. There's the science part, which you just described. There's geography, the Italy and the America. And then the one that surprised me, being a child survivor of the Holocaust, was when I hit the chapter of World War II and a little bit of the history of Italy and how that plays into the story. So I wonder if you could just go there for a minute and tell the audience how the rabbi in Brooklyn happens to be married to an Italian Jewish woman. And she is not crazy about his wanting to go there back to Italy. Why? You want to talk about that a minute?
Yes, yes. But that was another, so one of the other elements in this is, and as I was thinking about this, the framework for the story and this child in Italy and then the rabbi in Brooklyn, as Jay will probably tell us, in terms of finding a transplant for somebody, usually you have to share certain ethnicity. That usually there's got to be some kind of connection for the most part. So I've kind of envisioned a whole backstory for this connection between the rabbi and the boy in Italy. And this is another sort of personal connection to this story. I wanted to have a Holocaust kind of theme.
Why? You want to explain to the audience why?
Yes. So my father grew up in Hungary, and he actually was in a concentration camp during World War II. And he was one of the lucky ones. He was in a camp in Austria. His parents were there, and they survived and eventually made it back to Hungary. But this is something that he's carried with him for years and sort of passed it along to me and to all of us, our family. So I definitely wanted to have that as a background, as a theme. And I knew a little bit about what happened during World War II in Italy. I had read Primo Levi's, a lot of Primo Levi's books, which were very dark, to say the least, of his time in Auschwitz. But I did a lot of research on, what happened to Jews in Italy during World War II, and it really kind of surprised me in a lot of ways, because the fact is, unlike Hungary and unlike Czechoslovakia, where Luca's family comes from in the book. There, anywhere from 70 to 90% of the Jewish population eventually died during World War II. Whereas in Italy, it's the opposite. 85% of the Jews that were there at the time survive, and only 15% don't make it through the war. And that's not to say that, just everybody in Italy were wonderful to the Jews, and we know from Primo Levi that that's not true. But on the other hand, there were a lot of people that were very helpful. And I try to give a sort of balanced view. So in the book, there are members of the clergy that shelter Luca's family and try to get them out of Italy into Switzerland. There are partisans who are fighting the fascists. There are even doctors at the local hospital, and we know we know that this actually happened. At the same time, in the book, the rabbi's wife, her family, is also trying to escape Italy at the time. And they are turned in by somebody for reward money, and eventually get sent to Auschwitz and are killed. While overall the numbers are really positive, it was a very tough time. Primo Levi actually was sent to Auschwitz from a camp in Italy called Fossili. And of the 600 people in his transport to Auschwitz, only 20, including himself, come back. But again,
in the book, the rabbi's wife has such a bitter feeling about Italy because her family had not survived, that the conflict in the book is whether the rabbi is going to go to Italy and help this boy out, or whether he's going to listen to his wife who says, I'm not going back there and neither are you. So we won't give away what happens, but that's one of the central conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
So, this piece that I'm going to ask you about is not quite as serious as that. We'll go in a different direction. Luca has the little boy.
Yep.
Has an imaginary friend that he calls Orlando. It's like, when he's in his worst pain or feeling like there's no help, he goes to Orlando, his friend who rescues people in need and whom he hopes will rescue him. Where did you come up with that? Are you a fairy tale person where all of a sudden, in the midst of this serious stuff of Italy, the Holocaust and sickness and bone transplant, you created an imaginary friend for Luca?
No, I do not consider myself a fairy tale writer, but I wanted to sort of get the character of Luca, that he was a very imaginative, very creative kind of person, that he liked to tell stories, and stories that sort of would serve him well throughout his life. And this recurring story that he tells himself of Orlando does help him get through these kinds of moments, and does sort of foreshadow what ultimately happens, that this stranger from far away will come to rescue this boy. I just kind of like that idea.
And it really does tie in very well with the World War II stories, and that many survivors will tell you that often to get them through the days or the nights, they created people or women created recipes in their heads. In fact, we're going to have a conversation with a woman who wrote a book called Hidden Recipes that she found while she was in Auschwitz. So these kind of things helped a lot of people get through spiritually. So one can understand that that would fit in very well with the whole theme of the book. What then is our final question before we move on to meet Jay Feinberg, the founder and CEO of Gift of Life? What do you feel? What was it you felt when you finished the book, and what? I'm not going to say what message is in the book so much, although I'd like to know what your message is. Mine was, after reading it, of always having hope in life, no matter how bad things are. But how did you feel, and what was the message that you wanted out from this book?
I would say one of the messages is that we constantly sort of think of ourselves as sort of separate, independent entities, and I kind of wanted to say, well, maybe the boundaries between us are more porous than we think, and here is this boy in Italy and this rabbi in Brooklyn, and they somehow come together. And Luca's constantly sort of saying, well, now I feel the rabbi, now I feel this person is inside of me. And one of the quotes at the beginning of this book is from Walt Whitman, who says, every atom in me as well belongs, in you. That there is this kind of connectedness. And it's very helpful for the rabbi who's constantly trying to battle all of the divisiveness in his community, in the world, and trying to bring people together. And so I think that was the message, that there is this sort of interconnectedness, and we should think of ourselves in that way, and that people could help each other, and they don't necessarily have to be family. That maybe the world could be a better place if people thought more like that.
That's beautiful, and that's a beautiful segue to lead into introducing Jay Feinberg, who is the founder and CEO of Gift of Life, because the themes that you expressed in your book about interconnectedness, and it doesn't have to be family, it could be just a stranger that saves us, whether it's physically or spiritually, is really one of the themes of this evening's program. So at this time, and David, you will pick it up in a short while, it is my pleasure to meet myself, Jay Feinberg, who happens to be the founder and CEO of the program called Gift of Life. And Jay is now going to tell us a little bit of his personal story that led him to found this incredible organization, and a little bit about the organization. Jay?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here this evening, and thank you, David, for sharing your personal story and your book. It's incredible, and it actually goes full circle for me because I knew Rabbi Barry very well and his wife Miriam. Rabbi Barry was tested for me when I was searching for a donor for a bone marrow transplant. So it really comes full circle. It's really remarkable, and I hope you get to meet them one day because they're very special people. So a little bit about my story. David and I share something in common. We're both bone marrow transplant recipients, both 25 years post-transplant. That's right, David?
Yes. Yes.
Congratulations.
To you too.
Thank you. Thank you. So I was diagnosed with leukemia shortly after I graduated from college, and just as I was entering law school. when I was living back in New Jersey at the time. And at that time, the registries globally were all very new, and this was all very grassroots, as David knows well. And I remember going to the hospital at Sloan Kettering in New York, and sitting in the small consultation room with both my siblings and my parents, and the transplant physician telling me that there was a treatment that could save my life, a bone marrow transplant, which was remarkable. And then in the same breath saying, but you'll never be able to have one. And when I asked him why, his answer shocked me until I understood. He said, because you're Jewish. And it wasn't until I understood the genetics behind this, and as David mentioned, that your tissue type is inherited like the color of your eyes or your hair, so your best chance of finding a genetic match lies with people with the same background, that I really understood. And understood also, as David mentioned, that the Holocaust had a tremendous impact, really severing bloodlines and likening the search to looking for a needle on a haystack. And actually, there are many groups that are underrepresented in the global registry even today. During my search for a donor, when I was first diagnosed and when David was diagnosed, the likelihood of someone who was Eastern European Jewish finding a match was less than 5%. Today, that number is more along the lines of over 80%. But we still have a very long way to go. If you are Black or African American, if you are Hispanic or Latino, if you are Native American, if you are Pacific Islander, Asian Pacific Islander, your likelihood of finding a match is equally poor. And that's why we need to work very hard to increase the diversity of people of all backgrounds in the registry, to democratize transplant and what we call cell therapy, so that everybody has an equal opportunity to find a donor that can save their lives. But my story started in that small room at Sloan Kettering, because the doctor knew a lot about bone marrow transplants and leukemia, but one thing that he didn't understand very well was the power of the Jewish mother. And my mother was not willing to let her son die. So when he said to go home and prepare my bucket list, she wasn't about to allow me to do that. And instead, we started Gift of Life with the goal of recruiting as many donors as we could into the registry globally, and not only finding a match for me, but finding a match for lots of other patients in similar circumstances. So mine was one of those stories of hope, which I think is so important, because as it happened, after 4 years of searching for a donor and trying to find a match, my disease began to accelerate and things were looking bleak for me when a college student in Chicago decided to run one last drive for me, because a match was found for his closest friend, who found a match from one of my donor drives, and he wanted to pay it forward. And they ran the drive at a yeshiva in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where a young lady came to volunteer, his next door neighbor. And she, at the time, it was a blood test. Today, it's a cheek swab to join the registry. But at the very end of the drive, she decided to overcome her fear of needles and get tested. And out of 60,000 people at the very last donor drive, she was the very last person tested, and she turned out to be my match. So, one thing that we always share with patients out there is never to lose hope. And one thing that we share with donors out there, people who are thinking about joining the registry, is that it only takes one person to save a life, and it could be any one of us. So it is just so important to swab your cheek and join the registry and help save a life. And we're going to hear from the parents of a little girl who we're searching for named Sloan a little bit later in the presentation here, to really drive home just how important that is. But my life was saved, so was David's, and we're here today to really emphasize to you and encourage you to share with everybody you know that you can make a difference in this world, that you can do good, and you can help make this world a better place. We all know about the concept of tikkun olam and pikuach nefesh, saving a life, and really that's what it's all about. So I know we're going to have some questions and answers later, so I'd love to take them later when it's available. But I think Miriam, there is something very exciting that you're about to share now that I'd love everybody to hear about. So thank you all very much. And David, thank you so much for sharing your story and your book.
Thank you, Jay. We'll have to talk.
Yay, but what a beautiful story, Jay. We're so lucky that we have you. And that 60th person is, again, an example of never giving up hope, never give up hope. My mother always used to tell me that as a child survivor. So I'm so glad that we had this opportunity to learn about Gift of Life from you and what an incredible life-saving organization that is. And to tie it all together this evening, David is now going to have the incredible honor of introducing us to a transplant recipient and his donor. So, audience, be prepared, because the transplant process is anonymous. And tonight you are going to witness these two men who have never met before. So I turn it over to you now, David.
Thank you, Miriam. This is actually a first for me. I've never done this before, and I'm very excited and honored to do this. So let's start with the recipient, Dan Aaronson. Danny is an attorney from Davie, Florida, and a little over a year ago, he received a marrow transplant from someone he wasn't related to, someone he didn't know, a stranger that saved his life. I imagine, hi Danny, I imagine that you've been thinking about this person a little bit, maybe wanting to meet that person and thank that person. Well, if that is the case, then the time has come. Welcome, Danny. It's been a little bit over a year since you received your transplant. How you doing?
It's been about 14, 15 months. I am doing fine. I am healthier today than I have been in 10 years. I am going through graft versus host disease. And during the course of my recuperation from it, I did get the coronavirus and spent 15 days in the hospital because of that. And if you put it all together, I lost about 60 pounds in a year. I've gained about 15 or 20 of it back. And other than the remnants or going through graft versus host disease, like I said, I think I'm healthier than I've been in 10 years.
That's great. That's really great. So this is what I know of your story, Danny. About 5 years ago, you were diagnosed with Myelodysplastic Syndrome.
Correct.
Type of blood cancer where the body is no longer able to produce blood cells. So the cells that we were talking about, the white cells and the red cells and the platelets.
Mine was red blood cells, but they told me eventually it would be the white blood cells and the platelets, and they were hoping to do this transplant before everything kicked in.
Well, so actually that was my diagnosis as well. And I know it, and I know from experience when faced with that, it's pretty scary, for sure. So the doctors told you that you would need a transplant. Your brother was tested and unfortunately was not a close enough match. I think he, as well as the rest of the family, felt hopeless, that there was nothing they could do to help you, to save your life. And they turned to bone marrow registries. And luckily, the Gift of Life came through with some potential donors for you. And in October of 2019, you had a transplant at the Sylvester Cancer Center in Miami. And I'm told you had tons of support, which I know from my own experience, because I also had tons of support, is so crucial to the success of a transplant. Your wife, your children, extended family and friends, all encouraging you along the way. at the hospital, and then when you were at home recovering and waiting for your immune system to recover. I'm told your wife was super protective, keeping the home as sterile as possible for you, doing everything she could. Yeah.
She was absolutely amazing.
My mother's on the, I'm sure my mother's somewhere around here. She was equally concerned about preventing me from getting any kind of infection. So I know what that means. Anyway, as you said, all was going well, and then you suddenly get COVID. That's crazy. But clearly you are a fighter, and clearly you overcame a little COVID, which was nothing in comparison to myelodysplastic syndrome.
Oh, I wouldn't say that, to be honest with you.
I'm sorry.
I know this is an MDS and a bone marrow transplant forum or seminar or meeting, but to be honest with you, they had me in the death column for the COVID virus.
Wow. Well, we're all glad that everything turned out well.
It did.
Yeah. So, Danny, now is the time to meet the donor that helped save your life. Something you've been waiting for and that you've been excited about. Am I right about that?
I was excited, then I became nervous, and today, the whole day, I have been antsy. I truly want to meet this person.
Okay. All right. So before I introduce you to him, let me tell you a little bit about your donor. Well, first of all, it's a he. I don't know if you knew that.
I knew that because I had done enough reading to know that the chances are that the match is going to be of the same sex.
Okay.
It's unnormal for it not to be.
Okay, so it is a he, and he is a 27-year-old man from Fanwood, New Jersey, where he works in compliance and operations for ETF Managers Group, a company that specializes in portfolio management and investment. In 2013, he was on a birthright Israel trip where he agreed to swab his cheek and join the Gift of Life Registry. Gift of Life's partnership with Birthright has led to thousands of new donors added to the registry and an incredible 300 transplants so far. So your donor loves music. He likes to go to music festivals. He's a big fan of the New York Jets, which I'm not so sure that I would be advertising, but that's okay.
Well, I grew up a Giant fan.
What?
I grew up a Giant fan.
Okay. Well, he's also a Rangers fan. I hope that's good.
We're there.
Yeah. And in fact, he's not just a fan, he's a player and has actually played with several NHL hockey players in his day. And I think this is a good thing, because now your blood cells are not only going to be very investment savvy, but they're going to be highly athletic and robust, given this donor. So I think that it
Can
will
only help my golf game.
It will, I'm sure. In all seriousness, your donor doesn't consider himself a hero, but and I'm sure you would agree that that's exactly what he was. And now, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to your donor and hero. His name is Jonathan. Welcome, Jonathan.
Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Danny. It's nice to meet you.
Same here. There are a lot of things I'd like to say to you. I don't know if I have the time, but first of all, again, thank you. You saved my life. And I don't know what you say to somebody that has saved your life, but whatever I could say, I don't have the words to say it. I just appreciate it. I don't know where this goes from now. I am willing to have you in my life to the extent that you want to be in my life. If this is the last time you want to see my face and hear my voice, that's your call. And if you would like to become part of my family, You already are inside of me, and you are already family. It's your call, Jonathan.
Well, thank you for the very kind words. I'd love to continue to be a part of your life. I'd love to actually, meet up one day when, everything with COVID is behind us and the world kind of returns to a little bit more of a normal place. I did just get my second vaccine recently, as did my fiance. So I'm sure, we're definitely on the right path. And I'm glad that, given everything with COVID and what happened with you, I'm glad that you were able to, push through that as well. It was a very scary time indeed for everyone. My mother actually is also battling cancer. So with COVID, we were extremely careful, and I haven't hugged her in over a year. So it's something that I'm looking forward to putting all of this behind us. And once we do, I'd love to go down to Florida and escape this treacherous New Jersey weather.
Well, you're welcome here, but I have family. My brother and other family members are on right now, and we are all from New Jersey, so I'll be going up there also.
Ah, great. Whereabouts are you from?
Well, I'm from Ridgefield, Fort Lee in Bergen County.
Mhm.
My family lives in Manalapan, which I believe is Monmouth County.
I grew up in Manalapan, actually. Spent probably about 7 to 9 years there, somewhere around there, and then moved to Marlborough. So I'm very familiar with the area.
Okay, well, that's where I will be going.
Easy peasy, as my fiance says. So
Anyhow, like I said, I don't know what to say to you today. I certainly would like to be able to contact you after this ceremony and just talk person to person. And I'm 40 years older than you are. I'm not sure how much we have in common other than sports. But you know what? We have my blood in common. And your blood, your cells must be incredible, because I know you heard it, but they really did have me in the column in the hospital that I wasn't making it. They had already planned on putting a ventilator down my throat. And I talked to the doctors afterwards, and they said when they would do that, they had no hope that I would ever regain consciousness from it. And I took one last blood test or breathing test or whatever they were doing, because I didn't know all they were doing. And I started to improve. And I don't know if it's me or you or us together, but as a team, we made it.
Well, thank you. Whether I truly helped in that aspect or not, I appreciate it either way. And, I'd like to think that I did. But either way, everything I did, I know helped. And, it's a warm feeling inside, but all I can ask, for anyone is to just pay it forward. I know Jay had mentioned that, and that was a big reason that I did it. One day tables might be turned and I might be in your shoes, and I just pray to God that, if someone was a match, they decided to go through it as well. Cause it really, it's a very changing experience emotionally as well. From my standpoint. So yeah, I'd love to discuss more in an informal setting, talk about everything, and I'm sure we have plenty in common. You'd be surprised. I'm young, but I'm an old man in my soul.
Well, I am old and I'm still sophomoric and still in high school or college. So
that's about where my maturity leveled off. So.
And I've never been mature.
Well, perfect. We'll get along great then.
I'm hoping very much so. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Well, I'll just jump in here now to go to the chat. And I got to tell you that I have heard plenty of stories where I've gotten very emotional. And I have tears in my eyes right now for the two of you. This is very touching. And it reminds me of the Talmudic saying, to save one life is to save a world. And Jonathan, you did that. You saved one life, but you saved a world, really. And I just congratulate the both of you. And I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to moderate this evening. And David, you're just a gem that you wrote that beautiful book. I've been asked to go into chat and ask a few questions or commentaries. Let me go through some commentaries. The name of the book for David Brio, once again, is The Dappled Sea, right, David? The Magnificent Dappled Sea. And let's see if we can get back to the questions.
Miriam, there's somebody asking about, I'll jump in to help you out.
Sure, why don't you go ahead?
That there's, that somebody had been on the registry and then they're, now that they're a senior, they're told that they're no longer eligible. Is there an age limitation? And if you all don't know, we can also ask Jay to unmute himself with what he did, if you can answer that or chime in.
Yeah, of course. So there is an age range. It's age 18 through your 61st birthday. So, and there's, if anybody has any questions with regard to health eligibility or anything like that, it's all on the website at giftoflife.org.
If I can say something, I was 64 when I got mine. And in fact, during the time, right after I got out of the hospital, I turned 65. And they did not want to give me the transplant until I got to that age. So they delayed it for a couple of years. So I don't know how that fits in.
Yeah, so in this case, we're talking about the donor age as opposed to the recipient age. But as far as recipients, we transplant recipients well into their late 70s. But for donors, it's through your 61st birthday.
I'm sorry.
Caitlin B says, thank you, Jonathan. We love our Danny very much. And you did an incredible thing for him. We appreciate you so much. The program is recorded and Karen will take care of that. What is involved in this kind of transplant for the donor? I'm sure that's not a simple question, but who would like to answer that one? What is involved in this kind of transplant for the donor? Jay?
Yeah, so I can answer that as well. So, a lot of people, there's a lot of misconception about being a donor, and a lot of people get their understanding of the donation process from TV and the movies, and unfortunately, that's not very accurate. So in reality, about 80% of the time, people will donate stem cells from the blood from their arm in a procedure that's very similar to donating platelets in a blood center. So the way that we describe it that's pretty accurate is that you come in the morning, you watch a movie, you donate stem cells, and at the end you've saved a life. And it's really very different than how it's portrayed on TV and in the movies.
Danny's kids are all here, I understand, in the chat. I don't know if Karen wants to highlight and show them if they want to raise their hand. I don't know if you want to do that.
You can raise hands. There are a lot of people on the call, so it's a little bit difficult to navigate all of that. And we do have one more person that we do want to bring up onto the screen. If there are no more specific questions, I'm just, well, somebody would like to ask David Biro about the origin of the title of the book. And I know that you talked a little bit about
we talked about that in the beginning, yeah.
If there's anything
who is the person you want to bring up?
Yes, so we do have a special guest with us tonight, Seth Caston. He is the father of a 4-year-old girl. Her name is Sloan. They live in Delray Beach, and they are desperately looking for a donor. And so I'm going to have him tell you a little bit more. Sorry, give me 1 second because I had him on my list here to bring up and now I can't seem to find him. So bear with me for one moment as I look for him in my list here of participants. There are a lot of people on the call, which is a great thing, and I don't know where he went.
Do you or someone from the organization?
Seth, if you can hear me, if you turn on your camera, that will make it easier for me to find you.
I'm on.
Okay. I don't know where you went, but you're not on my.
Well, there he is. Seth, do you want to tell us your situation?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes,
we
we
can.
can. Oh, there you are. Okay, I gotcha.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'll stay on this. Oh, there I am.
There
Okay.
you are.
So just to give you, my name is Seth Caston. My wife is Carrie. I have twins, Mackenzie and Sloan. They're both 4 years old. Beautiful girls. When Sloan was 11 months old, we found a brain tumor. And unfortunately, it's a pretty bad malignant tumor. She went through, just to give you a quick history, she went through about a year of heavy chemo and radiation, and she had about 9 months of no disease, and she was in remission. And about 9 months later, it came back in the spine, which is very typical for this type of tumor. She then continued on for about 8 more months of a slightly different kind of chemo, where she was at home, and it was a lot easier chemo to handle. And after 8 months, she developed MDS, which is, there's not been any record of anyone having this tumor and developing MDS at the same time. So it's really been one for the books, unfortunately. And she's an incredible little girl. So we turned to Jay Feinberg and his team, which have been wonderful, of Gift of Life, to help try to find her a bone marrow match. And we've been together. We've been on this hunt for about 6 months. We know it's extremely difficult, a needle in a haystack, but Sloan is doing great. You wouldn't even know there's anything wrong with her. She's currently actually going through another round of radiation to her spine. But this 4-year-old girl is so unique that she wakes up every morning at 5:30 to leave the house at 6 a.m. to go to Kendall, an hour away. And she's excited to go for radiation. The doctors have never seen anyone like this before. She can't wait to go. She finds it fun, and all the nurses play with her, and every day she's happy. It's really makes our lives a lot easier. But a wonderful child. And so hopefully after this round of radiation, we'll hopefully be in remission, and we're on the pursuit looking for a bone marrow. So it's so important that we get the word out. Her hashtag is #SloanStrong. It's gone viral. It's gone international. We've had celebrities out there pushing. From my understanding, we've already saved 2 lives from the Sloan Strong network. People signing up, just so simple to get swabbed, and just getting the word out there. We never knew from swabbing. We never knew from being from bone marrow. How would we? So, all the people that we're meeting, they didn't know about it. So, we're really bringing this to the forefront in our world, and really getting the word out there on all social media and broadcasts like this to swab for Sloan, because we do need a bone marrow transplant for her. And it's so crucial to get the word out there, how simple it is to just swab your cheek and send it off, and hopefully you can save a life. So,
Thank you, Seth, for that very warm and touching story. There's a question, Jay, that somebody wants to know, how do you get swabbed?
Yep. So it's really very simple, and anybody anywhere can do it. If you just go to www.giftoflife.org and click to get tested, you can fill out the online registration form, and we'll send the swab kit to your home. You do it in the comfort of your own living room. You send it back, and we get you tested into the registry. Very simple process.
What is the next step? Let's say that I were to get swabbed, and God willing, I'm a match. What would be my next step that happens then?
So your next step would be to have a physical exam to make sure that you're medically suitable and eligible to donate. And when you're medically cleared, you'll go through that process that I described earlier, which as I said, is a lot different than what people may see on TV. It's that process of donating stem cells, which is very similar to donating platelets. You can be very comfortable while you're doing it. You watch a movie on Netflix, and all the while you're watching a movie and eating some fresh baked chocolate chip cookies, you're saving the life of a patient who needs you.
And is there an age limit on the donor?
Yeah, so the donor age limit is what I had mentioned earlier. That's 18 to 60 through your 61st birthday.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And anyone can be a match. That's why we should never say, oh, what are the chances that I'll be a match? It could be any one of us at any time. So we encourage everybody who's in that age range to please go on the website, order your cheek swab kit, get tested as fast as you can, and God willing, somebody here watching might be a match for Sloan.
Thank
Seth,
you so
I
much.
pray for you every day for your daughter, and I have the greatest of hope that we are going to find a match.
Thank you.
So at that point, I'm going to turn the program back to Karen. Karen?
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you all. This has been quite an evening, and I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. Thank you to Gift of Life for partnering with us, and to Dan and Jonathan and Seth, and of course, David Brio, Miriam, Kline, Kasanov. Don't forget to order your copy of this book, This Magnificent Appleseed. It truly is a beautiful story, and one that I personally enjoyed very, very much. I did put the link for our local bookstore here in Miami, Books and Books, where you can purchase your book easily, and please do. And just thank you, David, for doing this. After all of these months of talking about this event, we finally did it. So it's been wonderful. And we hope that you'll come back to a future program at the Miami Beach JCC, where you can tune in virtually as long as we're doing that. So
May I say something before you all go?
Sure.
yeah.
I thank Jonathan, and I will thank him every day of my life, but I must thank all of you. You all are so much better people than I am. I've never done anything like this. I've never, been a donor. I know now I cannot be, and I wish I could be, but you all are spectacular people for giving of yourselves. And I just want to let you know, from my doctors to Jonathan, to my family, and to you all, how much I appreciate the whole process, and thank you.
You are very welcome. And I expect that you and Jonathan are going to exchange emails and become best buds and get together in New Jersey or in Florida and invite me, and I'll join you. I'd love to have lunch or dinner with the both of you, as well as David, when you decide to come visit Karen in Florida. So with that, I want to thank you all for allowing me to be a moderator. This has meant a lot to me as a child survivor of the Holocaust. It's all about spirit, hope, survival. And there are many ways that people survive, but this is a beautiful, beautiful experience. So thank you for allowing me to be part of it.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.